Welcome to the deep dive, where we take the most overwhelming, intricate, and often just dizzyingly dense source material, and we cut right through all that noise to give you the core insights you actually need.
Today, we are wading into a truly formidable stack of sources. We're talking articles, research notes, and of course the core text, all detailing the psychological and supernatural breakdown of one family inside one very specific, very cursed address.
Yeah, this isn't light reading.
Not at all. It's almost an academic study of how deeply entrenched generational trauma can manifest as, well, as literal horror.
And that's exactly why we're here. Our mission today is to give you the ultimate shortcut to understanding this whole nexus of terror surrounding Draper House, or as you'll find it's known in the surrounding neighborhoods, the Screaming House. We're moving past just the simple plot points. We want to really analyze the characters, the specific psychological conflicts, and the deeply rooted occult lore that defines this location.
And the sources provide this clinical but terrifying look at what happens when personal internal demons, things like denial and inherited guilt, when they intersect with literal, powerful, dark forces rooted in voodoo practice and just past sins.
Right.
So we're really trying to extract the core insights here. I mean, how does trauma not just haunt a place, but actively manifest physically,
Yeah.
demanding a terrible kind of rebirth?
Okay, so let's unpack this setup. We are in Washington, D.C. It's a very specific, very charged location on Hammer Street, right near Winthrop Park. And our subjects are Rachel and Hugh Adair.
And they've just moved into this gray, tall, thin, 19th century stone townhouse. They're hoping for a fresh start.
They're a fresh start that they're definitely not going to get.
Not even close.
Ugh.
And this initial environment is so vital because it establishes the duality that's going to define the entire Adair experience. The sources really stress that the house sits precisely on the border between a historically wealthy, good neighborhood and an impoverished, bad one.
And there's a literal line, right?
A literal line. The massive shade line cast by Winthrop Park acts as this perfect physical division. It marks the difference.
So if we're looking at the Adairs, I mean, that physical boundary immediately mirrors their internal state.
Exactly.
They're already struggling, they're already on the edge, and now they're moving into a house that is essentially sitting on a psychological fault line.
That's the perfect way to put it.
So we begin with Rachel, and she is, as the sources put it, the breadwinner. She's the lawyer, she's carrying the financial weight of the family.
And she approaches this new home with this desperate, almost willful idealization. She gets so excited about what she calls the wonderful 19th century flavor.
Even though there are immediate red flags everywhere.
Everywhere. I mean, dark blue, oppressive wallpaper, grease just caked on the stove, a banister that's so rickety it's genuinely dangerous.
Yeah.
She sees all of that but chooses to focus on the flavor.
But it's more than just, liking old houses, right? Her idealization, as the sources clearly establish, is directly linked to this deep, unacknowledged grief she's carrying.
It is. She immediately fixates on the circular turret room. She sees it, and instantly in her mind, it's a future nursery.
Which is such a loaded image for her.
Incredibly loaded. Because that vision is defined by profound loss. The sources describe her thought of this nursery not just as a wish, but as a prayer.
A prayer.
Yeah. And this is a direct consequence of a recent miscarriage, where she mourned what she internally referred to as a small subdividing sphere.
Wow.
So the house, in her mind, it must be functional. It has to be renovated. It has to become the symbol of the normal life that she is so desperately trying to manifest.
But the reality of the situation is, well, it's actively corrosive to that dream.
Completely. Because you have Hugh, her husband, who is currently unemployed after failing the bar exam.
Right, so he's relegated to being the house husband.
And the house just immediately becomes this sinkhole for their already strained finances. It's just a constant demand for money for paints, drapes, crucial repairs. Everything is breaking.
And this role reversal, this financial strain, it manifests physically in what Hugh is doing.
Yes. He takes on these really aggressive renovation projects, stripping wallpaper, regrouting, and significantly using a sledgehammer with an almost frightening intensity.
He's not just fixing a wall.
Oh, no. The source material strongly suggests he is using that sledgehammer specifically as an outlet. He's taking out his long-suppressed aggressions, not just on the walls of the house, but symbolically, on his own failure.
And they can't talk about any of this.
Not directly. So because they can't communicate about the financial or the emotional stress, Rachel resorts to these non-confrontational passive-aggressive signals. She's hoping to motivate him without actually causing a fight.
And this is where we see the whimsical but also deeply anxious messages she writes in the steam on the bathroom mirror.
They are so powerful and honestly terrifying in their banality. Just one word at a time. Breadwinner.
Work.
Cash flow. And the fourth one, the one that's the most pressing symbol of her fear of time and failure, the big 3-0.
She's just trying to tap into his guilt.
Right.
Drive him to action, hoping he sees these messages as he shaves or showers, and it just clicks.
But the strategy fails entirely. And that tells you everything you need to know about Hugh's psychological state. He either willfully ignores them, or he truly doesn't even register them.
Which is almost worse.
It is. This complete communication breakdown just confirms his ongoing psychological retreat.
Exactly. His failure to even acknowledge these messages is a retreat back into his core coping mechanism, one he was apparently trained in since he was a child.
Let's pretend.
Yeah, let's pretend I haven't failed you. Let's pretend everything will be all right.
And the moment the stress gets too high, there's a scene after a failed interview. His reliance on alcohol just comes roaring back. He orders wine. He starts losing count of his drinks. And he just further disconnects from the objective reality of their situation.
Denial is his default setting.
It's his only setting.
And at the same time, the house is actively fighting back against this whole idea of renovation or normal life.
Oh, absolutely. The domestic decay in Draper House is described with such incredible detail that it becomes as unsettling as any ghost. We're talking pipes that are squealing and spitting rust-colored water.
Drain clogs, immediate infestations. It's a nightmare.
The cockroaches, for example. Rachel spots one that, in her panicked imagination, seems like a 6-footer.
And that's the house's way of saying, you are not in control here.
Precisely. Then you have the mice. Hugh sets traps, and the sources really emphasize the sound, this loud metallic clacking throughout the night as he catches 9 dead mice.
That sound is so crucial because it immediately connects the mundane filth of the house to the supernatural dread.
It does.
That repetitive clacking sound instantly reminds Rachel of the clapper ghost, which is a piece of the house's horrific folklore that we are definitely going to get into.
So the physical decay is directly reinforcing the spiritual dread. It's working together.
Yeah. And as the domestic environment just completely deteriorates, the house introduces its first active agent of destabilization.
Personified by the eccentric downstairs tenant, Penelope, Mrs. Deerfield.
What a character. Described with a thick, maybe slightly affected British accent.
And she's already drinking Kahlua and milk at 10 in the morning.
She seems odd, but, initially harmless. She's focused on her jams and pickles, but she wastes no time at all providing the first piece of specific dark lore.
Right. She asked Rachel if she believes in omens.
What's the thematic significance of her immediately introducing that concept? I mean, that's not a normal neighborly question.
It signals that the rules of normal life are officially suspended. Mrs. Deerfield, even in this really brief interaction, identifies the house not just as haunted, but as the clamoring place.
The clamoring place.
And a cart for, or a crossroads, where spirits actively cross over and demand attention. And that term, cart for, is just crucial in voodoo cosmology.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
It suggests a spiritual traffic jam, a place where the barrier between worlds is thin or maybe non-existent. The house is an active magnet for spiritual forces, which she knows immediately.
Wow. And just as the Adairs try to briefly escape this chaos, they plan a short vacation, the house strikes back. It ensures there's no respite.
And this is where Mrs. Deerfield's pregnant, puffy Himalayan cat, Ramona, enters the tragedy.
Ramona.
Ramona is portrayed as his little warrior, despite her appearance. Rachel actually watches her hunting and swallowing a roach with a truly nauseating sound, a moist crackle.
Ugh.
So this cat, this symbol of domestic nature, literally fighting the filth of the house, is then tragically killed in an accident involving Hugh and Rachel's car just as they're leaving.
Then the sources really emphasize Rachel's immediate, profound guilt over Ramona's death.
That guilt is critical. It's so critical because it gives Mrs. Deerfield, who we're going to learn is far more than just a strange tenant, it gives her the emotional leverage she needs for manipulation later on.
So the brief escape fails completely.
Utterly. Hugh gets a terrible sunburn, he struggles with severe constipation, and the house's influence just follows them. It ensures they return defeated, financially lighter, and just ready for the next phase of the assault.
So, if part 1 detailed the present-day psychological vulnerabilities of the Adairs, Part 2 is where we dive into the historical and spiritual foundation that makes Draper House such an effective engine of terror.
Exactly. It's known variously as Draper House, the Screaming House, and it's located near the infamous Needle Park.
Which already tells you something about the neighborhood.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And we need to start with the architecture itself. The house is linked to an architect named Julian Marlowe, who was known for his distinct, disruptive style, which the sources actually term Marlowisms.
And that term needs unpacking. I mean, what exactly does a Marlowism entail in the context of this house?
Well, it wasn't just bizarre aesthetics. Marlowe intentionally designed layouts that were confusing and just wrong. He put in numerous unnecessary entries into rooms, odd angles, and perhaps most importantly, concealed or wasted spaces.
So the house's design is physically intended to disorient the people living inside it.
Precisely. It mirrors the psychological confusion and denial that Hugh especially suffers from. The architecture itself prevents a clear, objective view of reality.
That's a brilliant connection. The house is structurally designed to cultivate denial and confusion.
Which makes it the perfect vehicle for the voodoo entities that are later introduced.
Okay, so the house's bloody reputation, that begins with its very first resident, Rose Draper.
Right. Rose Draper was a lady of the evening. She ran a house of ill repute, and she catered specifically to congressmen and senators.
So right from the start, there's a theme of corruption and powerful secrets within D.C. society baked into the walls.
Absolutely. And she died violently. She was stabbed with a very specific, very mundane kitchen utensil, and an apple coring knife.
And her legacy is the clapper ghost, the sound of which Rachel hears when the mousetrap snaps shut.
Yep. Her ghost supposedly warns of police raids, but the lore is grimly connected to the sexually transmitted disease she carried. So it connects the house's spiritual contamination directly to the corruption and vice of its original inhabitants.
And from there, the house's hunger for flesh and for identity just amplifies.
It really does. It's amplified in what's called the Standish tragedy around the turn of the century. And we only know about this through the diary of a young woman named Verena Standish.
And what does the diary tell us?
It details how their governess, a Miss Fields, who is described as having a very fragile identity, a susceptible mind, no strong sense of self.
She was the perfect host.
The perfect empty vessel. Miss Fields became utterly possessed by the house's evil spirit, which led to the unspeakable act of murdering and then devouring the Standish children, Emmy and James.
Devouring them.
Devouring them. And Verena's diary provides the chilling insight here. She writes that the house is a hunting ground where spirit without flesh seeks to invade flesh.
Wow.
So the key takeaway is that the house doesn't just oppress you, it offers the victim a horrifying sense of purpose, a new identity.
So Miss Fields found this terrible, malevolent identity in the house, and it replaced her fragility with monstrous action.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, so let's move forward nearly 70 years. We see the house becoming a magnet for a similar kind of corruption. In 1968, it was the site of these horrific sex cult slayings.
Right, perpetrated by drug-crazed hippies associated with a group called Swampgrass Rainbow, which was led by a man named Mark Podesky.
And this specific horror is layered with this grim social commentary.
It is. The news clippings from the time confirmed that neighbors heard the girls' cries of terror and agony, but they didn't find it unusual for the neighborhood.
They just ignored it.
They just wrote it off. It implies this societal acceptance of decay and suffering in this borderland location. The house thrives in places where human compassion and intervention have been completely eroded.
And the house resists any and all attempts at spiritual correction.
Every single one. An exorcist, Faye Randolph, visited in 1970 to try and cleanse the evil, but she died shortly afterward in a subsequent hotel fire.
So the evil is not only resident, it is actively protective of its domain.
Very protective. And this brings us to the active evidence of the occult that Hugh discovers during his aggressive renovations.
Right, he's tearing down wallpaper.
He's tearing down that dark blue wallpaper in the circular turret room, specifically in the vanity or closet area, and beneath it, Hugh finds a nonsensical word scrawled in red. Hun for.
So the house's architecture is now being explicitly linked to ritual. What does Hun for signify?
Well, Mrs. Deerfield, of course, provides the translation.
Of course she does.
It's a French term, she explains, for an altar or a place of worship within the voodoo tradition.
So this confirms that the house's bizarre construction, the Marlowisms, they were either intentionally exploited or maybe even built to create these pockets of spiritual energy.
The entire house is consecrated space, but consecrated for dark ritual.
And these rituals utilize specific concealed architectural elements.
Yes. There is the bricked-up closet in the vanity room, the one Hugh smashes into. And then there is the cellar below Mrs. Deerfield's apartment, which she calls the crib.
The crib? That's a creepy name.
It is. And ostensibly, the crib is for storing her pickles and jams, very mundane domestic items. But Hugh, in a moment of acute distress following a drinking relapse, he experiences this terrifying hallucination.
What does he see?
He looks down into the crib and he sees floating fetuses in jars.
Oh my God.
And this vision connects the hidden cellar below to the hidden room above in the vanity, where he had already glimpsed that white clenched fist creature retreating into the darkness. The house is a spiritual machine, and these two hidden rooms are its engine.
And now we have to introduce the true architect of the modern evil, the figure who weaponized the house's inherent corruption and brought the Adair family directly into its fabric. Gil Duras.
Duras, he's a Haitian voodoo priest, specifically a Bokor, and that distinction is really important.
Just so.
While voodoo contains traditional priests and priestesses, Huns and Mambos, of Bokor is a black magician. It's someone who works with the Lingtan path, using magic for mercenary purposes or for personal power. And Duras was an abortionist who ran his operation out of Draper House in the 1960s.
And he's heavily associated with Baron Samedi.
The guardian of graveyards, yes. The Loa, the spirit who governs the dead, and critically, the transition between life and death. So the house, the cart four, and the home four, under Duraz's influence, becomes this focal point for manipulating life, death, and especially the unborn.
So we're now moving from the external history of the house to the internal rot of the Adair bloodline.
And it's absolutely impossible to grasp the depth of Hugh's psychological damage and why he is so uniquely vulnerable to this house without confronting the depravity of his father, Winston Adair.
Known to Hugh simply as the Old Man.
The Old Man, a man defined by this brutal, corrupt patriarchy. He saw his own power and his sexuality as monumental. He famously referred to his own penis as the Washington Monument. And his long history of moral decay began with Maddie Peru, a black woman he hired as a prostitute.
But the story is more tragic than that, isn't it?
It is, because Maddie Peru was secretly in love with him. But when she became pregnant with his child, Nadine Adair, Winston, who viewed her simply as property and a mistake, arranged for an abortion with Gil Duras at Draper House.
So that's the first touch point. That's where the Adair corruption first makes contact with the cursed house.
It is. But the vengeance for this betrayal, however, is not only psychological, it's intensely physical and occult.
Because Maddie Peru was secretly a powerful Mambo priestess.
A Mambo, a spiritual leader and a healer, connected to the benevolent side of Vidun, but when they're provoked, they wield immense power.
And Winston provoked her.
In the most brutal way. During a vicious encounter where Winston attempted to rape her to death, Maddie fought back not just physically but spiritually. She called up the demons of hell to bite me, and this resulted in a truly visceral and disturbing manifestation. Mud dauber wasps emerged from her vagina and stung Winston's penis and testicles. So this curse, delivered from the very core of Maddie's spiritual power and targeted directly at Winston's corrupt source of power, it stayed with him for decades.
And Duras, the Bokor, he was later called in by Winston to clean up this spiritual mess.
Yes, and he used black magic to make Maddie Peru forget Winston entirely, to make her go mad, just to erase her from Winston's life, which just demonstrates the immense power Duras held over both the living and their minds.
But Winston's ultimate, unforgivable betrayal, the original sin that guaranteed the Adair bloodline would be cursed and that the house would eventually claim his descendants, that came in 1968.
And this event happened concurrently with the sex cult slayings, which is no coincidence.
The house was active.
The house was hungry, and Winston owed Duras a favor. This favor was incestuous horror layered upon itself. Winston bought the unborn child of his own daughter, Nadine.
The same child Maddie Peru bore.
Whom Winston had also slept with. He arranged this transaction so Duras could use the fetus for a black magic ritual, thus providing the flesh that the house craved.
And the source material is just. It's brutal. It spares no detail.
No. Winston stood by in Draper House, watching as Gil Duras devoured her Nadine like a hungry animal during the ritual.
And the horror is compounded by the fact that Maddie Peru, made mad and invisible by Duraz's magic, stood nearby, but she didn't recognize her own daughter being mutilated.
Or the father who perpetrated the entire horror.
This absolute corruption, incest, murder, the use of the unborn for ritualistic power, This is the core thematic function of the Adair family history.
It ensures that the monster the Adairs eventually confront is not just some random ghost. It's the physical manifestation of their own bloodline's deep-seated evil. The fetus is the ultimate symbol of that patriarchal corruption.
And this brings us back directly to Hugh, to his deep psychological scars and his reliance on let's pretend.
Right, because he finally confesses to Rachel the deep lie that underpinned his entire first marriage.
What was the lie?
Hugh's first wife, Joanna, was having a long-term, intimate affair with his father, Winston. And when Joanna became pregnant, with a child that may very well have been Winston's boy, Winston arranged for her abortion at Draper House.
And she subsequently died in a car accident.
An accident arranged by Winston. And Hugh was forced to live a total lie about the entire situation.
He was systematically hollowed out. I mean, he had to deny objective reality just to survive.
Let's pretend you didn't see what you saw. Let's pretend that woman was not your wife and that man was not your father.
And this denial mechanism wasn't just spontaneous. It was trained into him during childhood.
Yes. Winston Adair emotionally abused Hugh. He would often lock him in a dark coat closet for hours. And the only way out was for Hugh to deny what he saw and make his anger vanish into thin air.
He was forced to chant, "Nothing, I saw nothing," until his fists literally unclenched and his anger completely dissipated.
That is psychological warfare, and it perfectly set Hugh up to be vulnerable to this house.
The house, the screaming house, it provides him with a terrible, literal mirror to that trauma.
It does, because when Hugh sees the creature in the vanity wall, it looks like a white, clenched fist with the old man's blue eyes buried deep in its rippling knuckles.
The house is directly confirming his trauma.
Exactly. The creature is the manifestation of his suppressed rage and the corruption passed down from his father, embodied in a physical entity. Hugh is fighting the ghost of his father's sins, which is also, in a way, his own denial.
Okay, so as the past and the present converge, the house is not content just to destroy the Adairs mentally. It is now actively targeting Rachel's immediate future.
Because Rachel believes, desperately, that she is pregnant again. The return of the sphere that she mourned.
And this hope adds just an unimaginable amount of pressure.
She keeps it a profound secret. She refuses to tell anyone because she is terrified of jinxing it, given her history of loss. She's clinging to the idea of this child as the anchor for her longed-for normal life.
And the house is drawn to this nascent life.
Like a magnet. Rachel has this deeply unsettling encounter in Winthrop Park with two strange, unsupervised children, Jamie and his sister, who claim to live in Draper House, the one in between.
And this scene is terrifying because these children possess this unnatural, corrupted knowledge.
They do. The little boy, Jamie, draws a crude diagram of conception in the dirt and speaks explicitly about babies crawling out of the cunny.
Just awful.
And, more chillingly, he talks about how half-done babies need to crawl back in, which explicitly violates the natural order and confirms the house's connection to the manipulation of life in the unborn.
The proximity of these children, these corrupted heralds of the house, it terrifies Rachel, and significantly, it causes painful spasms.
Suggesting a direct physical threat to her secret pregnancy.
Oh.
And as they leave, Jamie confirms the source of the corruption. He leaves one word scrawled in the dirt, G-I-L.
Oh, wow. Meanwhile, Hugh is finally reaching his breaking point. He's compelled by the physical evidence of evil he's finding.
Right. Slightly drunk, he uses a crowbar and a hammer, and he just tears into the bricked-up vanity wall, the source of the Hun 4.
And this is the moment of his first critical physical break with denial. He sees the thing.
He sees it. A pure whiteness. A creature with the blue human eyes retreating into the darkness, like a white clenched fist. He vows to open the wall completely. He is finally choosing action over, let's pretend.
At the exact same time, the old man, Winston Adair, is having his final reckoning.
Yes. Hugh's brother Ted visits him and finds him completely paranoid, covered in industrial-strength wasp stings.
So the decades-old curse from Mattie Peru is reactivating as the house prepares its ritual.
It is. And Winston finally completely breaks down. He confesses everything. The affairs, the abortion of Joanna, Nadine, Deraz, the sale of the fetus. He realizes the whole bloodline is corrupted.
And he realizes that the housekeeper, Mrs. Deerfield, plans to use Rachel as the strong vessel.
The incubator for the monster fetus, for Gil Deraz reborn.
His final act is just horrific and desperate.
In a bid to escape Deraz's hold, which is somehow keeping him alive and cursed, Winston attempts this gruesome suicide by repeatedly hammering his own face and body, smashing his testicles in his eye socket.
But he can't die.
Duraz's spiritual hold is too strong. He cannot die immediately.
That image of the patriarch self-mutilating, trying to destroy the source of his own corruption, it's so potent.
And with his final bloody energy, he writes the only thing that matters. Help Rachel.
So Ted drives immediately to warn her, but he arrives too late.
Way too late. Ted is met at the door by Mrs. Deerfield and is immediately possessed or replaced by an entity. It's implied to be Duraz's spiritual presence, or just the pure evil of the house preparing to stop Hugh.
And the possessed Ted speaks in these nonsensical, cynical phrases.
Which is a classic voodoo possession trait. He's been taken over by an entity that is not the person himself.
So the ritual begins.
The ritual begins. Rachel, already exhausted, is compromised by Mrs. Deerfield's dreamland tea, which tastes ominously of licorice, almonds, and brandy.
Ingredients often associated with poisons and potions.
Exactly. The tea paralyzes her, and she is carried down to the crib.
And the crib is fully revealed as the altar, the center of the dark worship.
Mrs. Deerfield, the housekeeper, is confirmed as the figure who assisted Gil Duraz back in 1968. The room is surrounded by fetuses in jars, the Legion of Unborn, those saved by Baron Samedi for Duraz's use.
And Mrs. Deerfield begins the preparation. She massages Rachel's paralyzed legs with shiny grease, identifying her as the strong vessel.
And she justifies their actions. She says they poisoned Rachel to ensure she wouldn't struggle because the entity will devour flesh and avenge the wrongs done to those who clamor here.
Which links the ritual right back to the house's original function as a clamoring place of unaddressed suffering.
And finally, Rachel witnesses the monster fetus, the creature taken from Nadine Adair's mutilated womb, the physical manifestation of Adair generational corruption.
What does she see?
It's described as rat-like with pulsating veins, a wart-studded nose and mouth, and critically large blue human eyes.
The exact eyes Hugh recognized in his vision.
And the creature mules one word. Mama.
That is the ultimate horror, the demand for nurturing from the embodiment of incest and murder. The stage is set for Hugh's final confrontation, which requires him to reject everything he has ever been taught about reality.
And this is the dramatic climax. Its power is entirely dependent on Hugh's psychological breakthrough.
Right. So Hugh, he's drinking in the park, and he's forced out of his denial by two urgent, overriding visions.
The immediate physical urgency of Mattie Peru and the ghostly sight of the old man's battered, bloody face demanding he help Rachel.
He has spent his entire life operating under, let's pretend. Now he has to choose radical, irrational belief to save his wife.
He races home, and he's carrying this strange and morbid talisman. Mattie Peru, driven by spiritual urgency, had dug up her daughter Nadine's grave and handed the skull to Hugh.
And he catches it.
He catches the skull instinctively, the way he would catch basketballs in college. It's this automatic acceptance of the irrational reality he has fought so long to deny.
It's the point of no return.
Absolutely. The symbol of his family's cursed Nadine's skull is now the tool of their potential salvation.
And he finds the front door blocked by the entity inside his brother Ted's body.
Right. Possessed Ted is wielding the sledgehammer, the very tool Hugh used to channel his aggression, and he's boasting about becoming coagulated with the house.
So Hugh is facing his own suppressed rage and denial, physically manifested in his brother.
Who has now achieved the same monstrous identity that Miss Fields did decades earlier.
So the battle is on.
It is. Hugh, fueled by a strange power that the sources explicitly state flows from Mattie Peru's touch. He grabs the hammer. He feels something like liquid fire flowing through his arms and into the hammer, a strength he had never had before.
This isn't just physical strength.
No, it's spiritual conviction. He smashes through the newly sealed brick wall leading to the crib, confirming that physical action rooted in belief can break the house's occult structure.
And simultaneously, Mattie Carew, the Mambo priestess, enters the crib to confront the source of her original pain, Mrs. Deerfield.
She regains her voice and her strength, screaming the curse that seals the fate of the housekeeper. I give you Boshen.
Okay, the term Boshen in this context is crucial. What is it?
It's a powerful binding curse or a ritual demand within the voodoo structure. It's often associated with a dark sacrifice or a judgment. Mattie is sacrificing herself and delivering divine justice.
And she then performs the final act of vengeance.
She wraps her trash bags around Mrs. Deerfield's face and uses the original murder weapon, Rose Draper's apple coring knife, to disembowel Duraz's physical spirit. which is contained within Mrs. Deerfield's body.
This is a complex spiritual transaction.
It is, and Mattie Peru dies immediately afterward as Mrs. Deerfield tears out her heart. This act is the necessary sacrifice. It's the payment of the potion that breaks the Bokor's hold on the house, but at the cost of the spiritual warrior's life.
She completes the circle of her daughter's sacrifice.
She does, but despite the spiritual defeat of Duraz, the entity is still active.
The monster fetus.
The monster fetus, embodying the Adair corruption, stabs Rachel in the shoulder with the coring knife, threatening to eat its way out of her body.
But Hugh's there. He snatches her from the flaming crib and carries her out of the house.
And even the escape is a test of their newfound hard-won belief. Hugh carries Rachel to their car, but the vehicle fails to start.
And it only sputters to life once they are able to utter the definitive statement of victory and conviction.
They have to say they banished them. The mechanical failure represents the house's final attempt to enforce denial. They have to state the reality of the spiritual warfare to activate the machine.
So the house is consumed by fire, a spectacular physical cleansing, but the resolution for the Adairs is deeply ambiguous.
Very. Rachel admits the painful truth. She miscarried again. The absence of the sphere is confirmed by the blood and the pain. The hope for normal life through a child is destroyed.
The house targeted and consumed her grief.
It did. And in that raw, devastated moment, Hugh retreats. He attempts to comfort her, but he falls back into his lifelong conditioning.
Let's pretend, Scout, that we banished them.
The battle was won, but the war against his internal denial is far from over.
And this leaves us with the source's lingering, dark conclusion. The last lines note that Draper House, despite being consumed by the flames, still exists, cold, hard, and empty until the day of judgment.
The physical structure burned, but the spiritual nexus, the cart for where spirits clamor, remains intact. It's merely awaiting the next victims, or maybe the next cycle of the Adair line.
That deep dive was truly exhausting, weaving together generational corruption, occult warfare rooted in voodoo, and the minute claustrophobic psychological breakdown of two people just trying to live a normal life.
What really stands out is how the house acted as this immense spiritual focus. It wasn't just passively haunted, it was actively amplifying the Adair's deepest psychological wounds.
Absolutely. The house wasn't interested in random fear, it was interested in the bloodline. Duraz and the housekeeper were using the Adair family's self-hatred, Winston's corruption, Hugh's denial, Rachel's grief, to facilitate the rebirth of the ultimate symbol of that evil.
Right. The monster fetus wasn't a ghost. It was the physical, sentient product of their combined sin.
The significance of Hugh's final act, though, that provides the only real glimmer of victory.
I agree. His entire life was built on let's pretend. When he faced the possessed entity of his brother, holding the skull of his mutilated half-sister, he was forced to abandon denial and choose belief in the utterly irrational.
And that belief, powered by the spirit of Mattie Peru, is what provided the liquid fire and the strength necessary to perform the spiritual equivalent of an exorcism.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the screaming of the house is so complex. It's not just the ghosts of the victims of the cult slayings or Rose Draper.
No.
It's the anguish of the legion of unborn fetuses. And it's the screaming silence of Hugh and Rachel's lifelong denial and trauma, finally made physical and confrontable.
It raises a profound question about memory and permanence. The Adairs physically escaped the fire, which cleansed the structure, but as the source notes, the house still stands cold and hard in the metaphysical sense.
Right. The true evil, the influence, the secrets, the genetic predisposition to trauma, it existed in the bloodline and in the memory, not just the bricks.
So given that Hugh immediately retreated back to let's pretend after the immediate threat was gone, what enduring psychological and spiritual mark might the clamoring of Draper House have left on their future?
That's the question. They banished the physical foe, but can a man who was trained since childhood to deny objective reality ever truly be free of the supernatural entity that violently confirmed his worst fears?
And if the house stands cold and empty, is the only required ingredient for its return the next moment of profound human denial?
Think about that as you process this deep dive.